Okay.
Check. 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 1, 2.
Hey, nobody told you to sit next to me. That's you. You decided to do that. That was you could have sat anywhere else in the world. But you chose to sit here, and I appreciate you.
All right, everyone. How's the day been going so far? Been good, been good. All right, so I want to make sure that I say that Penn America has concluded their portion. So just wanted to say that for political purposes. When I,
We
well,
mess up somebody's brain.
well, I have to say, we've had, can I say this, pairs? I guess I can, maybe a little bit. So, Pan America, when they saw my lineup for the panel, they was like, woo, we can't touch that one, so had to put it to the end. So, we had to, like, switch it up a bit, because, y'all are some heavy hitters, and so, and, it's almost time to run for office again for a lot of you, and you are, which we'll get to that in a second. But I just want to say thank you guys for hanging in there. I know we lost some people. It's been a long day, and this is the last session of the day, which is, I think, the most important session as well. They're going to be touching up on a lot of the things that you learned throughout the day today, which I think is really, really powerful. So they've been prepped for you guys. They've been prepped. And so just again want to say thank you to everyone who, my Vernon Church family, for helping me put this together. Thank you so much. Dr. Myers up there been really working, and this is being live streamed on the Historic Vernon AME Facebook page. So I want to take some time to introduce everyone on this panel. I have the pleasure of introducing you to Dr. Janetti Marshall. She is our school board member for District 3. And they have very long bios. That's why I printed them out for you. So you can read them, and I wouldn't have to just read them all. And then we have Daryl Bright, who's the founder of Cubes. And then we have State Representative Regina Goodwin, the famous Regina Goodwin. She's shaking her head. She is the best state representative I've ever had. Thank you. Really are. And we have State Representative Monroe Nichols, who is also running for mayor for the city of Tulsa. And Monroe also chairs the Oklahoma Black Caucus. And so I want to start this panel off just the day before yesterday. Our state representative Regina Goodwin had a town hall, the Power of We, Dome to the Home meeting, as we call it. And Regina went over some bills that she has actually passed that I want her to just kind of touch on too. If you can, the bills that have passed that you this year. And
Are we talking about bills that have passed at the state legislature?
Yeah, at the state
that we need to be
legislature.
concerned about?
Well, I want to start off with all the good stuff that you've done. Can we stop? We talk about that because it still relates to what we've been learning today and what we've been talking about. So I really want them to hear that from you.
Okay, so this year in particular, some things we were talking about happen at the Capitol, some things beyond the Capitol. And I think that's what we need to understand, that when we think that, oh, we don't have the votes or we don't have the voices that we need at the Capitol, what can we do outside the Capitol? So we say dome to home, right? And this year we were able to, as it relates to the Biden administration and the Transportation Infrastructure Act that happened, we were able to get $1.5 million. And what that does is it allows us to study the removal of I-244 as it cuts through Greenwood. So there's really historic that a community was able to do that when we had to deal with the Oklahoma Department of Transportation, the city of Tulsa. They were also competing for that grant. So that's one thing in terms of what can we do in Oklahoma. That's one thing. We can see if we were able to remove that expressway, then you can repurpose the land and have community land trust, etc. And that's when we talk about moving Greenwood and making sure that we can stem the gentrification that happens. That's just one way. The other, we had the $1.5 million as it relates to the Tulsa Race Massacre. And $1.5 million never happened before. We were able to get that as it relates to the Tulsa Race Massacre. So for high school seniors, when they're going to college, have to go to college in Oklahoma though, but those monies are available. And that again shows progress on what can we do. That did happen in a bipartisan fashion at the Capitol. And then just very briefly, as it relates to our 3 survivors that we know of, as we're still fighting with the Oklahoma Supreme Court, Miss Leslie Benefield Randall and Mrs. Viola Ford Fletcher, Mr. Hughes Van Ellis, if they can't see justice in terms of through the courts, we were able through everybody, just people, to raise $1.63 million. And they've already received that money, and we want them to have some degree of comfort now. So those are 3 things.
Can we give our state representative Regina Goodwin a hand for that? And so I'm going to move to Dr. Janetti Marshall. And I think I'm going to just go in because one of the biggest things has been, you all have seen what's been happening in Tulsa Public Schools, the step down of Deborah Gist, and everyone is wondering, okay, what's happening next? What's happening next? So I would love to ask that to Dr. Janetti Marshall. What is the state of Tulsa Public Schools right now as it relates to all the attacks from Ryan Walters and the step down of Dr. Deborah Gist, and what's happening? Where are we at?
What I would first say is that if you know anything, we all have to go through, and this was the statement I made at the state board, as well as at our board meeting, we have to go through construction. And a part of construction is tearing down the old, that we can create a better situation, a new situation. So now with Dr. Gist stepping down and Dr. Johnson being voted on by the board to step in as interim, changes will take place. She will step in officially on the 16th of this month. When it comes to Superintendent Walters and the state board, we're in a good place in that there's an agreement that we're going to work together collectively as a collaborative unit. And I know that oftentimes I hear, well, you can't trust, you can't this, you can't that. Unfortunately, we're at a position, or fortunately, that we have to agree to go forward in this effort. We have to listen to one another, and that's what the district has set itself up to do, to listen and to work together to step away from the negative, backbiting and all of that. Because all that is doing is hurting our children, it's hurting our staff, it's hurting our state, not just Tulsa, but our state, because this has projected out on the national scene. So Superintendent Walters and the board, they've agreed, and positive step was that they came, 2 of the board members came a couple of days ago and sat in on a meeting with the interim superintendent, myself, the board president, and a few other staff members, and we went to schools. We went to schools that were low performing as well as high performing, because we have to begin to project and release information to say we acknowledge that we failed. That has been a problem with this district. We've been hesitant to release that information and just say simply, we failed. So once we got to the point where we understood that, now we can forget about that and move forward and begin to develop the plans and the programs and the supports that's going to put things in place for our educators, our site leaders, that they can turn education around. Dr. Johnson is talking about something that CUBES has been talking about a long time, and that's beginning to teach to the state standards rather than all of this MAP and everything else that's going on, because what that has done, that's set our children up. They are tested by MAPs, but not the state standards, and when they take that state test, they fail. So she's already making promises on things that the community and activists like Mr. Bright and CUBES have called out for a long time. So right now, we're in a good place, and that's what I choose to believe, because if I allow the negative to circulate in my brain, then I'm going to defeat my purpose as a board member, and that is to look with a clean lens at what's happening in front of me.
Now, you know I'm gonna have to say this, because I know you gotta put that in your mind. But there's a lot of parents who can't do that, and they just see a mess and they're scared. I've gotten the calls and the messages, and I wanna pull my kids out. I don't wanna, I don't know what's going on. And so they're just, I guess, looking at it for what it is, but you are too. You're just believing that we're in a good state, but there is a lot of fear out here that we're not, and they are afraid of what's to come for their children. So what would you say to those parents?
What I would say to those parents, that look at the fact that when we went to meet with the state board, at that point, everyone was believing, and the state superintendent was adamant that he was going to do certain things. When we walked out of that meeting, there was a different construct, a different narrative. So stay in tune, contact your school board members, if it's myself or others, and it's incumbent upon the district that we will continue to inform you. When you keep secrets and you don't inform people of what's happening, that's when discontentment, discouragement, and a feeling of being defeated takes place. The interim superintendent, effective on the 16th, she has pledged to be more present in community, not just at the schools, but in community, in settings like this, and anything else that she's invited to, because she wants to develop the relationships that we can continue to keep the lines of communication open, keep that information trail with all the positive information, not lies, not embellishments, but the truth. Yes, we're working on this. We ran into a snag here, but we still have hope that it's going to go right. That's one of the things in the 7 years I've served in this position that I have been critical of, is the fact that we have had this glass half full persona that we project to the community, where you hear that information. It's easy to go down that way. We have to begin to say, no, the glass is empty. It's not even half empty, it's empty. So just keeping the lines of communication, the information coming forward to community is going to be crucial in developing trust with the community, keeping our students, our teachers, and our administrators in our schools, and turning this around.
Monroe, Representative Monroe Nichols, being that you are also at the Capitol, like our state rep Regina Goodwin, and you're the chair of the Black Caucus, of the Oklahoma Black Caucus, what are your thoughts about what's been going on, considering Ryan Walters, Governor Stitt, and this PragerU curriculum that's happening at our Dome to the Home community meeting? State Representative Goodwin showed the video of the Frederick Douglass portrayal, the inaccurate portrayal of Frederick Douglass, and they're using this in our schools. They want to use this in our schools, considering they've created House Bill 1775, but they want to push this propaganda. What's going on? What's going on there?
Yeah, well, thank you for the question, and it's tough for me to answer a question like that in a church. There's a lot of things I would like to say, but I can't. I think what is the reality of all of that is that there is a national movement happening right now. And that national movement is to criticize communities of color and urban areas of indoctrinating kids, all while you yourself want to indoctrinate kids. And that's been true from even pre-House Bill 1775, but it's been more overt now. These were things that were very subtle for a long time. Now they are more overt, and they are dangerous because, I think at the end of the day, there's some people who believe, and it's awesome that we're having this conversation where we're having this conversation. There's some people who believe that if you just don't talk about the past, it'll go away. Or if you can just rewrite history, everything will be fine. And I think that is exactly what we are dealing with right now. And I'll even say this, Dr. Marshall, I appreciate yourself and other school board members really taking big steps in accountability in this conversation we have. You talked about expressing that we have failed, and we have to be honest about areas we've had failure. But I think there's a broader context there. I think, we talk about social determinants of health. Well, we have the same thing as it relates to education. And I carry around oftentimes, so a couple years ago, Tulsa released what were called the equality indicators. And so this is as if the city took a test in certain areas. And so we're thinking about a scale from 0 to 100, how well did the city do? So in education, which we were just talking about, we were 48 out of 100. That's an F. In economic opportunity, we were 37 out of 100. That's another F, a worse F. In housing, we were 45 out of 100. That's another F. In justice, 33 out of 100. In public health, 47 out of 100. In services, 42 out of 100. Tulsa overall was a 42 out of 100. Now, what that means to me is we're asking Dr. Marshall and Dr. Johnson and everybody else to deal with all these other issues, but we are saying that education is not the job of all the rest of us. And so we share as a community in whatever failure that you all believe that you had at TPS, and that's something that we all have to own, not just you all on the school board. I think it's also interesting to mention, of all the numbers that I read off, and I'm not saying this means that everything's okay, the highest score we had was in the issue of education at 48. To me, that tells me that we have school districts that are probably punching a little bit above their weight and dealing with a lot of other issues that are just difficult, and we can't forget about that in the context of the state. I want to point out that 45 out of 100 in the area of housing. If you look at what drives student outcomes, more often than not, it is not that there is a bad teacher in the front of the classroom. Oftentimes, it's the amount of time kids are sitting in that classroom. Chronic absenteeism is a huge issue, and it's not as simple as saying kids go to school more. We are number 11 in the country in evictions, right? That impacts kids' ability to go to school. There's so many of those areas, as I've read off those numbers, that are impacting that every single day. So my point about this and the Ryan Walters and the PragerU and everything else is that nobody wants to talk about the truth, all while we're trying to put lies into schools. And that's what's really frustrating about the position that we're in right now. Representative Goodwin, myself, and those of us on the Legislative Black Caucus have certainly been, loud voices as it relates to that, and we will continue to do that. But what is going to be critically important is that all of us understand that you can't fall asleep at the wheel anymore. Can't fall asleep at the wheel anymore, and that's essentially what happened. There's some folks in this community and across this country that organized their way to what happened at the school board meeting a couple weeks ago and the chaos that ensued. And we were sitting around thinking everything was fine. Everything's not fine, and so this is a real challenge for all of us to meet the moment on PragerU and meet the moment on all this stuff, because it is our community that folks are attacking. It's not just our schools.
I love that you said that these were people who organized their way to this. And I hope you all get that. There are people who organized just for this nonsense, this craziness. And so if they can do that, what can we do? And we did. We fell asleep at the wheel. We did. Daryl Bright, with everything that you've heard from Monroe Nichols, Representative Monroe Nichols, Representative Goodwin, and Dr. Janetti Marshall, how would you sum everything up that you heard them say as it relates to the state of Tulsa Public Schools and to its public education in Oklahoma, considering all the things that's going on? You've been the founder of Citizens United for Better Education System, which has been around for a very long time, and you've been very active at the school board meetings, active in communities. I was telling everyone earlier that you tutored my daughter in math, and so it's just you've always been on the ground like that, and just really caring about our children. And so just hearing everything you heard on this panel, how do we sum this up? What is the state of Tulsa Public Schools in your eyes, and with education, public education in Oklahoma?
Ms. Williams, how much time do you think we have? Let me tell you, I'm pleased to be on this panel. I don't get invited to too many panels, either to accuse people, but it's a very serious situation. I mean, it has been in our district for some time. And it's systemic. And it's systemic racism. And it's institutionalized racism. But we have a tiger that we're facing right now down in Oklahoma City that we're going to really have to deal with. We're really going to have to deal with. At this point, we have to come together here to ensure that we have the democratic right to select our board and also our superintendent. Because that tiger is trying to take that away. And like I think I mentioned earlier, this is not a fringe element movement. This is a movement to change the way of life of America. And this is just one step in doing that. Now, when we look at the fancy cartoons that they've made of Frederick Douglass and others and try to peddle that as something that we need to really take a look at. The information is decontextualized. I've looked at another one that dealt with strictly slavery where they had a human being talking. But she said there was nothing wrong with slavery. We've had it since the beginning of time. But it was nothing like chattel slavery. I'm telling you. So what has happened, they mix and match and plug and give half-truths. Because when you look at anything just like slavery, for instance, there is a difference and a uniqueness since the beginning of time. Slavery was first came about on this planet Earth, and it's not all the same. It is not all the same. They had Frederick Douglass. That is not Frederick Douglass in a cartoon. You show me where Frederick Douglass said that. They can't do it. And it's not intended to be something that you could prove. We'll just put it out there. So we see the truths that are being distorted, put in a fancy kind of way that it'll lull you to sleep. It feels as though, yes, this person knows what they are talking about, but you know what? They're taking advantage of the school systems not teaching world history and U.S. history. They didn't tell the truth. So they're plugging in what you don't know. And it seems okay. You know, this is pretty good. People sound intelligent, etc. They're selling you a bill of goods. But we don't have the framework, the foundation of U.S. history, African American history, world history, to say, hey, that's not right. And they know that our children are susceptible to this. Being in cartoon form, people are looking good, sounding intelligent. They're taking advantage of what we have not learned in our own school systems. This is insidious, but it's here because someone has a different view of America and what we should stand for and who we should be. Walter said he had people he was looking out to, and he said he was looking down at Houston. And if you haven't followed that, that is a pure mess. When they replaced the superintendent and the board members, et cetera, and just forced all of that down. Just forced it. He's learned a lesson. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to talk to the board members, and I'm going to act like I'm a gangster, and you will do this, and you will do that. And he's learning that I'm going to put the onus back on the community. Hey, I gave them 4 months to straighten out the whole system, and they failed. I'm coming in and doing what I want to do. This is a pimp hustler mentality. This is a pimp hustler mentality. It's a gangster mentality. Now, on top of that, he's going to tell you when to do it, how to do it, etc. But did he offer any assistance, any aid? He hasn't. Neither has his predecessors. I've got stacks of programs that have been out there from the state that they never saw to the end. So he's acting like he can take the moral high ground on this. When you look back and you sit in that seat, Mr. Walters, you have adopted the good, the bad, the ugly, and the best. And it ain't too much best, and it ain't too much good coming from the state. And how dare you try to take the moral high ground on this? Even when you were in the position of what? The Secretary of Education. You have done nothing but disrupt. And this disruption that we see is to replace. When CUBES, Citizens United for a Better Education, and others who have come before the board is trying to work together. He doesn't want to work together. You put out a deadline of 4 months to change a system, you can't change a classroom in 4 months. It is designed to fail. That means that we don't cry crocodile tears. We've got to come together. This is serious business. This is part of a national movement to put in a very fascist government. I'm serious. That's not to overstate it. When you look at what they're doing and you parallel it with what happened in Germany with the euthanasia agenda that they have, it follows it almost to the letter. When we look at book bannings, it's akin to book burnings. So this kinder, gentler way of just backing up and not doing what they did in Houston is a ploy. It's a ploy. But we've got to stop that. I mean, we've got to have coalitions that we never thought about to combat this. In the final analysis, when all is said and done, it proves to us that when you see this happening, and let me tell you something, I went back and read the 1987 Republican platform. It was there talking about this very day that we see now. And it's also in the Republican platform today and in the national. So this is nothing new. They took their time. While we were asleep, they say we were woke, but when we're asleep. And I told folks, I don't believe in this woke business. I am not woke. I am conscious. I am conscious. I know what's going on. I can connect dots. I know what's happening around me. I'm not asleep. I'm not in a coma. But that's where you're trying to put us. Let's be clear. So this whole thing about indoctrination, I hope I'm not jumping around too much. You know how even, and I'm going to go back to the pimp hustler mentality, they could try to convince you that the sun is going to come up in the west. And are you? So they're going to say, well, you're trying to indoctrinate. No, we're not. But that's how that works. And book bannings, and you're trying to put the Ten Commandments in the classroom. I mean, all of this is controversial. What he's doing, what he's not doing. And the thing about this whole thing, we're going to wake up one morning, and we're going to say, where am I living?
Doing that now.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So when I say, what do we have to do? What's going on? We have to work together. You know that. And you know how we feel and have felt about what was going on in this system. And we looked at the outcomes, but wait a minute. We have to be politically astute enough to know that in the art of war, whatever you want to call it, we're about to be eaten right here. This tiger's here. There are others out there that we have to deal with, but we've got to address that. And we can't be fooled about that and what's going on. If you play it as though it's just another day and this too will go away, they won't go away on their own volition. It won't happen. They've got governors, they've got state senators, and House of Representative folks. They are embedded in this system. That fringe element is now part of the mainstream.
Interject here. I want have everyone seen the video with the Frederick Douglass character? If you've seen it, can you raise your hand? You haven't seen it? So for those who haven't seen it, I want to ask Representative Goodwin to explain what happened in that video and why it's problematic.
Yeah, in this day and age, you guys, look it up. It's Leo and Layla and Frederick Douglass and PragerU, and you all know there's no university. He tries to have some kind of credibility by putting a U after his name. And so look it up. That's what I'm saying. Today, before the day ends, watch it, okay? And what we're saying is, what he's done is first of all, he's taken Frederick Douglass, who was an enslaved person, who somehow is diabolical, that they would use Frederick Douglass, who we all know fought for, he was an abolitionist, and they want to pretend that, well, I need to know what's this abolitionist. Watch the cartoon, and they take a man who, they actually have him say that the Constitution is a glorious document. And he says it in that time when enslaved people were considered 3/5 human. That's in the Constitution. What's glorious about that? But if you don't know that that's in the Constitution, you might say, oh, yes. What he's saying is fine. It's a cartoon. How? That's not harmful. And then he's talking to children. And he tells them that basically slavery was the compromise to make America great. And I'm looking at you all's faces right now, and I don't know what you're thinking. I don't know how you're feeling. But what I'm saying is, if you have any cartoon, and I'm looking at this child right here on this front row, and if they're going to tell you that slavery was the compromise to make America great, this child needs to know how we were brutalized, how horrific slavery is, that our bodies were torn apart, that children were taken from their parents, that they were brutalized in the worst kind of way. There is nothing about slavery that made America great. Unless this child understands that, she may very well watch a cartoon and come in and say, hey, they said, well, that was the compromise that we had to do to make America great. That is ridiculous. But if the parents don't understand that, if the parents don't know anything about Frederick Douglass, if the parents don't know, and they also said that in that same cartoon that America was the first to ban slavery. That's not true. But if you don't know your history and you don't know what was the first country to ban slavery, right? So look up Denmark, look up a number. Folks that study this and know it, and their teachers, they know that that's not true. But if you've not been taught that, you can watch that cartoon and think that it's okay. And it's not okay. And then you need to understand, every time you see a cartoon like that, that is an assault, that is an attack on every black person that has ancestors that have been destroyed in that way, right? And it's really bothersome because we're so docile and we're so quiet as we talk about this, and we're going to have to band together. Yeah, we're going to have to do more than band together. First of all, we're going to have to be aware and knowledgeable, first of all, because if you're not educated, how are you going to fight something? So that's why I'm saying, if you don't do nothing else, watch that video today. It's easy to pull up. This millionaire has made it very easy for folks to see it. And he says it's for free, but poison, whether it's free or whether you have to pay for it, is still going to kill you.
That's it.
Yeah,
We're gonna,
go ahead.
possibly pull up the video.
So,
You got the video?
oh,
Can you pull it up?
Yeah,
You
we're
got it?
gonna try to.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, to send you. Okay, I'm gonna send her.
Do you have the one on Columbus?
Huh.
The lies that they said Columbus said it was better to be a slave than get killed. So come be a slave. It's and when you go through, don't stop. Scroll through all of them if you can, as many as you can, and you'll see a similar kind of message of deceit.
It's our first time on a panel together.
Yes.
Give us some
Oh,
moment.
okay.
There we go. We're gonna get there.
All right, one of the other things in watching the vignette on Frederick Douglass is that we have to be mindful what I saw on there. Number one, they told us we have to be patient. I think enough time has passed that we don't need to be patient. The other thing, as a community, and I'm gonna use Representative Goodwin's terminology, as a community of black folks, we have to understand that our money is not good money. The young lady that is narrating the voiceover of, they have her for a few dollars high-fiving what is being said, the message that's coming across. So as a community, we have to understand that is what has happened in education. We take some kibbles and bits and we're okay. But kibbles and bits will not pay the bills, and it will not empower our young people to be the leaders that we need them to be in the future. So we have to be very mindful that we don't become surface people, where we look at surface things and say, oh, that's good, that's where we need to be, or that's gospel. Because it's the things, the undercurrent that is getting to us as a community when it comes to education. That is what has happened. We have to start reading between the lines. And I'm just gonna say this, for 7 years, I have stated over and over again in public meetings like this, the seat of education for Tulsa Public Schools, which is the Charles Mason Education Center, is named after a card-carrying KKK. Is named after someone that the federal government had to come in and make him integrate the schools. He defied Brown versus Board of Education. So, Mr. Bright is right. We have to know our history, and Representative Goodwin, we must know our history and know why are we sitting here as a people in Tulsa, Oklahoma, with the seat of education being named after someone that would lynch all of us.
Absolutely.
And so vignettes like this, Frederick Douglass, is just bringing that mentality to pass. And you're right when we talk about this has been something that was noted years ago. Dr. Leslie Fenwick, Professor Emeritus at Howard University, she stated this, I believe, in 1983. The plan was there. And this didn't just start with Ryan Walters and Deborah Giss. It was planned. But when Deborah Giss came to Tulsa Public Schools and said, I'm gonna make Tulsa Public Schools a portfolio district, what she was saying is, I'm taking education out of Tulsa Public Schools and making it a business center. That way, we could adapt to the things that we now have coming at us. Because we're no longer in the business of education, we're in the business of business, corrupt business. And that is why we're under an FBI investigation right now and a state auditor investigation. So we cannot remain silent. We have to be vigilant. We have to stay on the wall and understand what's going on around us.
Ryan Walters is under an FBI investigation also. So
Absolutely.
let the people know that.
We
he
have
done?
the video, and we're gonna just play the video real quick so people can understand that.
Okay.
And see it.
That's right, Bob. Despite some violence and destruction by some of our angrier activists, we're seeing mostly peaceful protests. Protesters are demanding that the police be abolished.
Welcome. These local activists want to abolish the police. They're claiming systematic oppression and want the U.S. system torn down.
What is going on? Things are so weird right now.
I know. Mrs. Calder gave us an assignment today about being activists for justice
All right. So at this time, I want to do something a little different because we are running out of time. I would love for you guys to, if you're willing, to come up to the mic, say how you feel about what you saw, and if you have any questions for our panelists, please ask our panelists. Nobody has any questions? Nobody want to share their thoughts about the video? Go ahead, go ahead.
Immediately when it came on, I was frustrated just by his hair. And it's just a reminder of how they are constantly trying to make us palatable to white America. It's like he can't even have his own hair. He can't even be himself. Forget whatever was coming next. That there just angered me immediately. It's like, I can't even look, he couldn't even look like himself. And it just is a constant reminder of how we are constantly wearing a mask and all of what you all have been talking about, constantly being dumbed down, constantly being watered down in order for us to be okay. And I think that goes from banning of the books to, not wanting to do any, teach certain things because we don't want to make them feel bad. Well, guess what? We felt bad. Slavery was bad. And I think in order for us to truly find some type to reconcile, whether that be, and I'm not talking about reparations or anybody giving anything to anybody. I'm talking about reconcile that with ourselves. I'm talking about with our children being able to understand, teaching all children so that we know how to engage one another and not have this deep-seated division between races, communities. It's all because we're constantly hiding and not telling the truth. So let's get the truth out there. That way our children can feel free being them. I can wear my hair. I don't have to straighten my hair anymore. Now, we've finally gotten out over that. We don't have to straighten our hair anymore to fit in. I don't have to feel like, I have to look a certain way to fit in. But even still, having to walk in rooms, not feeling like I have to constantly be aware to make myself palatable to whoever is in the room. And that video was just a reminder of, I can't believe we're still doing that. I can't believe we're still doing that.
Yeah, when I was sitting here listening to it for the second time, it felt like it was maybe 5 minutes, but it felt like about 45 minutes of time. And I was thinking about this African proverb that said, until the lions have their historian, the history of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. And that's what I found myself thinking about as I was listening, and it really reinforced for me how important it is, to your point a second ago, that we just don't have these conversations about history, but we also have to talk about our lived history and lived experience with each other, because that's what gets lost oftentimes, how we feel about things. We're too afraid to have those types of conversations, too afraid of engaging people who might look differently and think differently, or feel what is passion people feel is anger oftentimes, and that type of stuff. But the other thing I was thinking about, I was like, man, this would make one of the funniest Saturday Night Live skits ever. Just the way in which that they were talking, right? But this is reality. This is reality. The state of Oklahoma has entered into a contract for this stuff to be available for consumption for children. This is just a small segment of that reality, and so I do think it is bigger than us, being angry. I think it is a complete repudiation of what is all wrong about how we think about this country. And, if slavery is what was necessary to make this country great, well, I'm not sure I want us to be that kind of great, right? Like I think we have to think about what does greatness mean in this country, and I think to your point, what you just said and what resonated with me is greatness is honesty. It is the only way that this country that we're almost 250 years old, I think 247, something like that. It is the only thing that makes us great is being honest about the road that it's taken to get here and be honest about what it takes to continue on. If we decide that we want to lie about the past, there is no future for us. There is no future for us. And this kind of stuff scares me because it is a complete left turn from what is going to make us the kind of country that we can be, which is a country that's honest about our past, so we can have a shot at the future. But this ain't gonna work. It also, to be honest, I mean, it was kind of fantasizing a cartoon. That's probably not too much different than the history that you got in history books when you was growing up, to be totally honest. I mean, it's probably not that far off. And so we have a lot of work to do because what you just saw, like it was, kind of, on a cartoon, and it was overly ridiculous. But the crux of it is not too much different than what we all learned. And that's a problem.
To speak to your statement, what we just saw basically states that the State Department of Education, in approving that curriculum, violated 1775 because it makes you uncomfortable. And that's the basic premise, although that's not the wording in the statute. That's the basic premise where Tulsa Public Schools received a loss. Well, we had a deficiency. So just a note that you can make that known in Oklahoma City, that they're violating their own policy.
Y'all know this is a sore spot for me. If we don't understand, and if you have not read 1775, nowhere in that language, and I gotta speak to this because that is not a violation of 1775, and I gotta just, while we're here, I don't want anybody to miss anything. It's trash law, 1775. Never should have been signed into law. It's horrible. But here's the deal. It says that, it doesn't say it's against the law for somebody to be uncomfortable in the classroom. That is not what it says, right? Let's be clear, right? Because you cannot legislate emotion. You cannot make how you feel, you can't put that in the law. What it says is that a teacher cannot put into her concept or his concept that a child like this, that I tell this child, you need to feel uncomfortable on what we're about to teach. That's the difference. That's the nuance. So it's not that you feel uncomfortable, it's that any teacher would have within their curriculum or within their teaching that my teaching for you today is that you should feel discomforted by what I'm about to tell you. It's got to be part of that curriculum. Nobody is doing that. And it was a lie when they degraded the accreditation status of Tulsa Public Schools because there was no evidence whatsoever that anything had been violated. The trick is when the deck is stacked and you got state board members that are going to do whatever the superintendent says, they don't care about evidence. It's like he's going to say it, they're going to agree to it, and Tulsa Public Schools is going to be degraded. And we understand, let's be clear on that. I say that over and over again, and I'm going to keep saying it till we get it.
That was my point when I made the statement and I said that the wording wasn't like that. They took it and they twisted it. And so what I'm saying is that it rests upon us to pretty much do the same thing to keep the conversation alive, that it is indeed trash law. If the other side can take it and twist it and make it seem one way, then we can keep the conversation going. But as long as they're the ones doing it, that is a one-sided conversation. It's a monologue and not a dialogue. So what I'm encouraging us to do is take our opportunities, however they present themselves, and at least put it at the forefront where it will have to be heard.
And Mama Love, I know you had a question. As soon as Daryl Bright finishes, and please. Okay.
That's right. Took someone that we hold in very high esteem and made him say some things that they can't even prove. And tell me if I'm wrong, because the person who put that first, I guess, grievance, if you call it, about what happened, she was saying she was feeling sorry for the white folks who weren't there. I mean, who didn't even speak up. That was in her statement. Yes, she said how it had embarrassed not her, but she was speaking up for others who it might have embarrassed.
Well, actually, she did say that in her professional development, that they were talking about bias, and that this was a lie. That she said that they had said that that she was born by just the nature of being born, that she was racist, and that was never taught. That was never discussed in the professional development. But that was in writing in terms of what she wrote. And I did see the video and the audio. There was no violation of 1775. The attorney at the State Department of Education knew that, had the conversation with them. You know, they were up there saying, well, the video is different than the audio, and that's the description. No, none of that was true. So the bottom line is, when you have a deck that is stacked, they don't care about evidence. They can bring the charge, that the state board members are going to vote on it, and every state board member is appointed by the governor. Each and every one of them appointed by the governor. So you understand that has become law. That didn't used to be the case, but during the Fallon administration and forward, they started making sure that those state board members would be appointed by one person, which is ridiculous. And I gotta let you know, Dennis Prager, look it up. Dennis Prager is a guy that said, it's idiotic that we can't say the N-word. Look it up.
Yes.
And they're saying, we at least need to be able to say it so we can teach people not to say it. That's ridiculous. Okay, so look that up. This is the guy that Walters has partnered with.
And I was gonna ask, did anyone have any more questions? It's 4:30, and we're gonna stop at 4:40. So I just we have 10 minutes left. I just wanna make sure you were able to ask questions while you have Dr. Janetti Marshall, you have Daryl Bright, you have our State Representative Regina Goodwin, State Representative Monroe Nichols here right in front of you. So if you have any questions concerning public education, what's happening at the state and the city, these are the right, this is the right time to ask these questions and to the right people. So if you have any questions, please get up and ask those questions. Pastor Ayin.
I just have a very broad question. What can we do? What's coming up? Like, what's within the immediate future that we could show up to, that we could participate in, to be activists?
I believe that I think something is coming very soon about an explanation that we all could unite around from the, I guess, interim superintendent. But hey, stay on top of it. Come to these board meetings. Come to the board meetings. Okay? What's the address? First and third. I know when the meetings are. What's the address? Oh, they're the first and third Mondays of the month. At 6:30. At the Educational Service Center, New Haven and 31st Street. Okay? And listen and participate. And you can sign up to speak, but you have to do it 7 days prior to the next meeting.
Which is, again, more policy to silence you.
Yes, just more. And come, listen, because there are people from Moms for Liberty, which is really a right-wing mothers group that has put on their website quotes from Hitler. You know, and they sit there, and they're there. The right wing is there. And you
One
can
of
hear
them's
it,
on the board right now,
right? That's correct.
at-large member.
Yes. So when you come, listen to what's being said. Come and ask questions. Come and just, if you hear someone speak that you think you have some unity with, speak with them. You can write your views and send them to any board member. And that's on the website, their addresses, if you have something to say. But the best thing that you can do is speak from that mic and let them know that we will not tolerate this and what your grievances are and what you stand for. See, many times we talk about what we're against, but we never talk about what we're for. And that's one of the things in the community that we're really gonna have to work on, because a lot of times we get satisfied with just coming to the board meetings and laying out grievances and say, boy, I told them, and then go home and sit down. Told them what? Told them why? You have to get involved. We have to make a demand for what we want for our children, which means what we have to do is have some sort of agenda which says, this is the kind of school system we want. This is what we need for our children, for our community. And I'd just like to say this, that all the information that we've collected, data, everything, is just like a broken record. It seems funny. They keep saying and doing the same things over and over again. We're getting the same results. And that's what will happen again if we're not careful. Is this is a time that we can really deal with that issue. Because the question becomes, how do we keep using the same thinking that created the problem to try to get us out of this problem? You can't. You can't do it. We all have to look deep down and say, what do we want for our children? But if you keep doing the same things over and over again, you're going to get the same results. So come, and I'll give you my address, phone number, whatever. We don't give addresses out, do we, anymore? Text, whatever, and we can communicate too. And that goes for anybody sitting out here. And the same thing goes with any one of us sitting up here. Let's communicate and stay in communication. And Regina has assured us that we were going to have more of those meetings that we had like the other night. And I think that was very informative, and I want to thank you for that. So we've got a lot of work to do and a lot of thinking to do, because we don't want to make the same mistakes over and over again ourselves.
Go ahead, Regina.
I wanted to say, I want you to know there was a 1031, House Bill 1031 this year to combat 1775, and it was called the Sanity in Education Bill. I wanted to repeal 1775. That's been tried. It did not get heard, right? They loved 1775, didn't like repealing it. The other was 1397. It passed this year. It was going to teach us about Martin Luther King. You got to ask yourself, if they had anti-1619 legislation, if they had 1775, are you really going to trust the same legislature to teach you about Martin Luther King? But that passed. So watch what's happening. Watch what folks are trying to do as it relates to legislation. But more importantly, I think we have to educate ourselves. So you won't, if we're going to fight, we got to fight right, and we got to fight with facts. So let's get educated ourselves. Then we'll know how to deal with what we got to deal with. But what we cannot do is say, well, they don't have to accept it in the schools, and so don't worry about it. You need to worry about it, because if a little white boy in rural McCurtain County, their teacher decides that they're going to take this, whatever this mess is, and allow their kids to see it, trust and believe, it still affects us. If it's not in your backyard, if your child is not learning that, that little boy is going to meet this little girl later on in life, right? And understand that it's disruptive and it's dangerous to America. So don't say, oh, it's not in my house. No, it is in your house, because if any child in Oklahoma is being taught that, that affects us all.
Just right quick. NPR Radio had just a blurb about Tulsa, Oklahoma. There is a person or teacher in this system that has downloaded one of those videos and said it was real, because they can download it themselves. And then someone else from the district says he would not have touched it with a 10-foot pole, and began to say it is dangerous for our children. So it is here. Who else has downloaded those and showing them in classes?
We have a question from the audience.
I just wanted her to know that you can go on the TPS website 10 days prior to the meeting, and you'll see the draft agenda. Look over that. If there's some items that impact you, that you have curiosity about, you can research it. You can contact myself or the district. And then the Friday before the Monday meeting, the final agenda is out, so you can check to see if that item is still on the agenda or if they've added something else. So that will give you talking points. And if you get there before the consent agenda has been announced, you can sign up.
You can go ahead and ask your question.
I have a bunch of questions, but thank you for doing this presentation. This has been good. And the one Thursday night was great. We need to do more of those, I feel like. One of my questions, I think, was just answered. I know TPS officially is not supposed to use these PragerU propaganda videos. What's to keep?
You mean that it's available to them? It is available?
No. I understand that, but officially, Bixby, TPS have said we're not going to use them, but what's to keep a teacher? And we have all these 5-week trained teachers who may think this is great. I can entertain my classroom with these free videos. I mean, is there something, and this maybe is for Janetti, is there something in place that we could know or to keep teachers, is this information getting to all the teachers to say you cannot use these in TPS? And my other question, you mentioned communication and maps. I don't know any parent or teacher who likes the MAPS tests, and I know there was some talk about making the curriculum align more to MAPS. Can TPS get rid of that? Because isn't that Gates money? Wasn't that the deal? And also, as you sit at that table with Ms. Johnson, is there talk about practical things that are going to be done that will correct the deficiencies? And can Ryan Walters be impeached? I mean, he wants to destroy public schools. He's basically said that. I mean, is there a chance that he could be impeached because he's done a lot of things? He's not doing his job.
Yeah, so I'll just take mine. Mine might be a little bit quicker than your answer. The answer is he can be impeached. And I can tell you that the conversations that I've had behind the scenes with members of the House Republican caucus, there's enough of them that have said they would like to impeach him for us to do it. The problem that presents itself, the same thing happened in 1775. When it comes to putting something on the board, courage oftentimes seems to find its way out the door. A lot of people say, well, we don't know if the Senate will do the same thing or whatever the case may be. But we could impeach him, and it's a very similar process that you saw in Texas with the Attorney General there. So we could do it. We could go back to session and do it next session. We could go to special session and do it tomorrow. And I'll just kind of wrap my closing onto this, at least for me anyway. This goes back to what we talked about being involved. When I was running for office in 2016, I told folks I want to go to the Capitol and fight for Medicaid expansion, and I want to do criminal justice reform, and I wanted to, list off all these things, increase money for public education, for example. I said that knowing I was one of 101, that was going to be difficult, particularly being a Democrat. But sure enough, you all decided you're going to go to the ballot and get criminal justice reform done. You all decided you're going to go to the ballot and expand Medicaid. Teachers showed up to the Capitol, and so we raised revenue to invest in education. So my point about that is that there are things that have been done because folks in the state and across the state and the community have decided that this has to be done. And so it's less a question for me as to if Ryan Walters can be impeached. It is more of a question for you all. Are you going to provide the kind of pressure that it takes? Because you already know what it takes. We've done it before. To make sure that my colleagues can find the necessary courage to do what they already know is right. And so what I would say is we talked about getting involved and all that kind of stuff. You guys did it for us with criminal justice reform. You did it with Medicaid expansion. You did it with us raising taxes to invest in education. here's another thing that's a threat to the future of the state, just like those other things were. And it is almost in your hands as much as it is in mine as it relates to providing the pressure that it takes for my colleagues to get just a little bit of courage to do what they already know is right.
Absolutely. I want to, since it is 4:40, yes, I'm gonna let you respond to that question, and then everyone gets 60 seconds to close, and I would love for you to close about, again, actions that we can take and how we can support you all in this fight.
In reference to teacher maybe stepping outside the guidelines as far as the PragerU, TPS has taken a definitive stand that that is not a part of our curriculum. We have already authorized and approved the curriculum that's to go forth for our students. All of you are parents, grandparents, uncles, aunties, godparents, play parents. You have students in our schools. Tell your students to let us know if it's happening. If it's happening, I believe that leadership will handle that situation. But no, TPS has not adopted that and will not be adopting it. As far as MAPS, what I understand, MAPS was a district leadership decision under the previous superintendent. Our superintendent will be putting out her first 100-day plan. She has a different direction that she plans to go. MAPS is not cutting it. So stay tuned when there are community meetings that we will be organizing for her to present. Please, please, please attend those meetings so you will know the superintendent and you will know what the plans are for your children, the children of this district. And we can take care of it from there. But it's up to us. And for me as a board member, I have always asked, and I continue to ask you, come to the meetings. And when you see something that is going on before you get on Facebook and do news, press conferences, please reach out to your board members to find out all the facts behind what is going on out there, because we do have to put a stop to some of this stuff that's going on social media, because it's giving powers that be the open door that they need to continue to attack. So let's begin to work on some of the problems that we have, and please, above all, let us know problems that you have.
Ms. Marshall, would you just explain very briefly about MAP, that acronym?
Quickly.
Quickly.
No good. Briefly, it is no good. I have teachers that have stated that they were taught how to teach the children to pass MAPS, but if they pass or they scored a decent score with the MAP score, when they take the Oklahoma Standards test, they are totally out the ballpark and they have no understanding of what's on that test, and it shows that they're low and not proficient in anything. So MAPS is something that CUBES has been preaching about at that podium for a long time, that we needed to do away with, and I'm glad to see it going, and I got a bottle of embalming fluid that I can inject in it to send it someplace.
That frees up about $4 million that they've had.
60 seconds, Brian.
Yes. Please come to the board meetings. Please pay attention. You'll see a lot of things in the paper. I'm not pushing the Tulsa World or whatever, but you will see things in the paper if you get it electronically that you will not see on the 10 o'clock news, that will spur something in you about what is going on, and hopefully will give you some insight on the questions that you need to be asking. And the other thing is, hey, I'll give you my number. Give me a call. I'll help you out. Appreciate it. Go to the board meetings, come to Regina's meetings, and any other meetings that may be called to deal with this very serious situation.
I was just gonna say let me just say this. You guys not only go to the school board meetings, because that's been the national strategy. They're starting at the school board level, and they can control quite a bit just there, right? When they can get to your children, right? And get all the parents up in an uproar about stupid stuff that they're just creating. Understand that it's a distraction. Understand that a lot of it is propaganda. But unless you're educated, right? And I'm not talking about, I'm just saying common sense stuff that we need to gather together. And I say this, just like Representative Nichols said, he could have been impeached, right? You talk about moral turpitude, willful neglect, a number of other things, right? But folks just don't want to do right at the Capitol. That's the bottom line. And I would say that come to the Capitol, go to the State Board of Education meetings also. They wouldn't even let us in the room at the State Board of Education meeting. So this is, and then because we asked the question, we were allowed to go in there, right? But he literally put the representatives in another room because he did not want us in the same boardroom where he was. Now that's crazy. When you talk about, that's crazy. So come, be engaged, be educated, be aware, and understand that local control matters. And it's not about Republican or Democrat. It's about the fact that you are a human being. You need to be engaged, involved, and get other folks to go out and vote. These school board members get on these boards with like 200 votes. 200 votes, you guys, and they're dictating what this child is going to learn, okay? So it's your money. I don't care if you got children or not. Your tax dollars, your property taxes are going to your educational systems. So that's it. Stand up.
Representative Nichols.
Man, as the last person in my 60 seconds, when you want people to vote for you, I'm going to be really quick. All I'm saying is I think I can't agree more with the things that I've heard. I think the one plus that I would say is that as you move out of this space, sometimes we have a tendency to spend time with everybody who agrees with us, so we are somewhat in an echo chamber. Challenge your friends. They're your friends. Challenge your family. You say don't talk about certain things at Thanksgiving and all that kind of stuff. Thanksgiving conversations, time for them to change, y'all. Like, I think we're at that point now. So I would say we all have some level of political and social capital. You start spending it talking to the people that matter in your life, even if they disagree with you, people you don't know, even if they disagree with you. That is really the only way that we combat this kind of stuff, and we continue to build the kind of community, I think, overall the kind of country that all of us are comfortable living in. So that's what I would encourage you to do.
And let's give them a round of applause, please. So welcome, and thank you all for hanging out with us all day. I want to just give another shout out to Paris from Penn America. Thank you for coming here today. Can you stand just so people can see who you are? Thank you.
What grade is Paris in? What grade is Paris in? She's like she's in the 3rd grade.
I know she looks so young, but she's a grown, amazing woman. And then I see them in the back. India's gonna be mad. India, Michael, can y'all please stand up? India Carr and Michael Cotter. They are my instructional coaches for Black History Saturdays, and they did Michael did a workshop today. India's flight was delayed, but she got here, so I'm glad you got here safely. And I'm so sad still. I'm sad and happy at the same time. I keep saying that. India moved back to Chicago. Yeah. All is good. India moved back to Chicago. Her husband, Marvin Carr, graduated from medical school, and so his residency is in Chicago, where they're from. So we have another Black orthopedic surgeon coming on up. So we're happy about that. Shout out to Marvin. So again, thank you all for coming. We're gonna also send updates of everything that happened today. So if you missed anything a part of today, we have videos, we have PowerPoints, we have all of those things that we'll be sending out. So if you registered, I have your email, you will get all of that. So I appreciate you guys for hanging in there. We lost some folks, but it's been a great day, and I hope you guys were filled and informed. And I hope you got mad, because I want you to get mad. I want you to get mad to do something. So get mad, then move. That's it. So thank you all so much. Thank you all for coming to the panel, Dr. Janetti Marshall, Daryl Bright, Representative Regina Goodwin, and Representative Nichols. Thank you all.